Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Winging It F1 podcast. There's 5 more car launches to get through. One of them hasn't actually happened yet, but hopefully will have happened by the end of the podcast, unless Enston gets hit by a meteor, even though it's not in Enston. But we're going to be talking about Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, and Alpine. But to do that, joining me are one person who's met Emma Raducanu and one person who calls his alarm clock Emma Raducanu. Freddie, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. That implies that I'm both of those people.
I'll let the audience figure out which is which.
Yes, Nigel, what was it like waking up to Emma Raducanu? Bloody hell!
The reason he the reason he said that is because on the last podcast I made a reference to his shower, and that's why I said something about my clock. So.
You're what?
I've had an opportunity to plug the previous podcast where you can listen to 3 team launches.
Oh God!
From 2 people
on various social media platforms, audio platforms, and
no social media platforms.
No social media. It's not a 50-minute video on Instagram on its own.
We'd need 5 Twitter Blue accounts for that. Nigel, how are you?
None of us have Twitter Blue.
How about I'm fine, mate. There you go.
There we go. Box ticked.
Fantastic. So Nigel will be chattier in this episode. We hope, actually. We don't know.
Nigel hates liveries.
It's not the only box I've ticked in my life.
I honestly couldn't care less about liveries. I'm more about how the cars go and track me.
Oh, look, it's a car. Oh, it's being launched. Oh, there's not a driver in it.
Oh, it's painted.
Now there is.
It's painted, or is it? Or is it just carbon fibre? We didn't have that. We don't need any of that carbon fibre.
My day, cars were built out of steel. Proper manly cars. Made out of aluminium and tin and moss.
Descended into a Top Gear bit there. Yeah,
we used to race whippets. We didn't race cars. Greyhounds.
Nigel still does race whippets, but a prancing horse that will be
launched their latest Greyhound. It's a black dog with a turquoise collar.
I'm now picturing a Mercedes Greyhound bus, but just like a massively stretched F1 car that's got people in it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be double decker.
That is true.
That's one of the more lateral viewpoints I think this podcast has got.
There's a lot of competition for that.
So yeah, there is.
Quite an accolade.
Whimsical F1 podcasts. What a category.
But we will start with not talking about whippets or greyhounds, but talking about a prancing horse instead, because Ferrari launched their car, which is basically the same as last year's car with a bit more black on it. And as we'll discuss over a number of these teams, then there's various degrees of painting it black so that it won't be painted black. It will just be carbon fibre and that saves weight. But Freddie, first thoughts on the Ferrari?
My first thoughts on the Ferrari is that I really liked the launch event. They somehow made it an interesting occasion.
Best launch ever.
Yeah, I would agree.
But the Spice Girls were at one.
Yeah, and my mum was at that as well, to be fair, which ranks it.
I thought you were going to say your mum was part of the Spice Girls. That's news to me.
Yeah, I'm actually Christian Horner's stepson.
She's still got the Union Jack dress.
Blimey. Anyway, back to Ferrari.
We were talking about this last week. We were saying how we got a bit more off the rails when Freddie wasn't there, and it's just me and Nigel. And then it's just carried on, even though Freddie's back. He's not arrested the slide at all. In fact, he's added to it.
Yeah, we're I think it's because, to be honest, with car launches, there's not very much to talk about.
Yeah,
but you've kind of got to spin quite a lot, and so sort of, what can I say about the Ferrari? I thought it was very well done. It was very slick, the launch. I thought the car looked stylish, but it's a Ferrari that pretty much invariably looks stylish. Leclerc and Sainz were definitely buoyant. Fred Vasseur was definitely coming across very well, and they oozed confidence, which didn't feel misplaced. Like, you can sometimes get the impression with Ferrari over recent years that it's kind of like, we know we should say that we're good and we're Ferrari and everything, but we also are scared to say anything, but they were just calm and comfortable. And despite having a massive audience on Fiorano's first ever grandstand, if I think, they did a nice job. And I think, my main takeaway is that it's brave to do a live track run at a car launch, live streamed on the internet. That is brave stuff. So fair play to them for that. And they've done weight saving stylishly, and it's still red. So great.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's the best looking car on the grid. It's the best launch I've ever seen in F1, and I'm not a big fan of launches in general. So for me to say that's quite big credit. I've got a good feeling about them this year. I think they are going to win the World Championship this year. No, this is the year. I think
won a few races
said that last year, mate.
they've got the best.
The
They've got the best technical team on the grid, I think, and I think they're going to win this year.
Said that last year, mate. I agree. I think we'll have to see what the car looks like once it hits the track in Bahrain for testing. But the other thing I'll add is I really like the old Ferrari logo on the rear ring with the top thing of the F spreading all the way along, because I had a Lego set of that at my grandma's house when I went there when I was little, and it had that logo on. So it was a reminisce for me. But other than that, yeah, I think it looks good. I'd say it's up there. I wouldn't say it's the best looking car on the grid, but I think it's pretty close. And yeah, I'm excited to see the kind of vibe around the teams. Team seems very good, so just have to see how it goes when they actually get.
What I think is interesting is they've kept pretty much the same concept as last year. They've not evolved towards Red Bull's concept. So the three big teams, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull, have still got very different concepts, which I think is just interesting in general. Because if Ferrari and Mercedes did go towards a Red Bull concept, I'd think, right, that means they don't have much trust, and they are going to naturally be a bit behind. But they've stuck with it, stuck to their guns, and they seem quite confident as they should be. And I've got confidence in them as well. So yeah, we will have to wait and see. But if you look at the progression Ferrari have made technically, and if you look at their second years after new regulations, they generally do very, very well. So that's why I've got a lot of confidence in them.
Yeah, I agree actually with what you're saying about how they've doubled down on their concepts. It does inspire confidence, because they're not stupid, and historically when they've done their own thing in development, it's usually worked. Yes, for Ferrari there were finicky situations with their power unit and so on at the end of the latest rule set, which meant they then had a car that was designed for an entirely different under car, if that makes sense. The aerodynamics wasn't designed for how it was deploying the power, but when it was all working in one, it was working well. And same with Mercedes with their pretty sort of unique but successful low rate concept. So transposing that, historically there is good a good track record for both teams in following their noses. So hopefully it works out for them. I agree with Nigel. It's fun to see different concepts and fun to see a variety, because they are quite prescriptive regulations, but they're not prescriptive at the same time. Weirdly.
Yeah, so they have gone with the kind of bathtub sides, like they did last year. I think you kind of referenced it there, Freddie. Really, it's the power unit will define this car as much as what we've seen, and that's the thing with all car launches. I mean, Ferrari obviously have their own power unit, but the floor is obviously huge, and we don't see any of that at car launches. So they're two big things that we don't know anything about. But like you say, I think the progression
we know some things about. We do know that Ferrari have been quite confident in that they've sorted the reliability issues that really held them back last year. They've basically come out and said, yeah, that's sorted, and that's a few tenths that we had to turn down from the car. When you look at sort of Austria, where they had a Color Science caught fire, and Baku had a double retirement and things like that. And then since then, that you can sort of point to that as sort of Ferrari then dropping off quite a bit, because they turned their engine down and they admitted to that. But they've said, and however much of this you can sort of take at face value in that, but that they will be running the engine. Nigel shaking his head and saying none of it.
Well, that's kind of what That's where I was going, really. That
All right.
I think we won't know that for certain until 10 races into the season. So yeah, but Ferrari have made very good noise on that, and it's a good looking car, and hopefully we'll be able to challenge for the title across the whole season. And Mercedes, like we said, have also gone with their pretty minimal side pods package from last year, and hopefully they'll hope that they've sorted out the porpoising. But yeah, I kind of just tacking on to what you said, it's really good to see that they're following their own design concept, because a lot of the teams are going for that, Red Bull just maximizing the space between kind of the top of the side pods and then kind of dipping under and having a huge space between that and the floor. So it's really good to see Mercedes do that, because if you follow Red Bull's concept from last year, your ceiling, is that kind of where they were last year, and Red Bull are going to be a step ahead of that. So you're never going to be able to, consistently fight against them if you're always playing catch up from a year behind. So yeah, I think it's really good to see that Mercedes are sticking with their guns, that they've not kind of abandoned a concept that was radical and did kind of get not exactly laughed at, but was just didn't work for them last year as a whole. And yeah, I think it's good to see that they've followed with that. They've obviously got a new livery as well. They've gone for return to the blackout livery, and after 1 year it's the Silver Arrows. This time it's not for kind of making a stand against racism and promoting diversity reasons. It's for weight saving, so they don't have to paint a lot of it, which we're seeing a lot of teams do to kind of greater or lesser extents, but certainly for Mercedes, then they've taken it to the extreme. Nigel, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do think, is it going to be a bit overweight? Like, have they done that because they think it is going to be 10, 15, 20 kilograms overweight? Or they could just be, of course, trying to, maximise the performance. Because it was like one of the most overweight cars last year, wasn't it? The Mercedes, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And Hamilton, yeah. I mean, Hamilton said that they thought last year's car was going to be on weight and make the minimum weight until kind of they got on track or got it, actually built it, and it was overweight. So yeah, but
yeah, they had a problem on the little demo run they did on what day is it today? On the Wednesday, but they said it was nothing. So I think Mercedes, I don't know. They obviously say they're going to be back and stuff, but I just can't quite believe in it yet. I think they've lost a lot of key technical people over the last few years, and I feel like over the last 18 months or so, we're kind of seeing the effect of that, and I kind of expect that to continue.
Well,
so
they've not actually been that bullish. I mean, they've not, they said they hope to be back and hope to be near the front, but they kind of said that they don't expect, or they expect they might not be the fastest team to start with, but they kind of back themselves to be a lot closer to the front than they were in 2022 to begin with, and then be able to make that gap up, if there is one, a lot quicker. So they're not, they're saying, they're obviously hoping for a drastic improvement from last year, but they've not come out and said they're expecting to be the fastest car in Bahrain.
I think the problem they've got is the operating window was very narrow last year. They need to have made that wider, and they need to have understood the tyres better, and raised floor changes that we've got by 15 millimeters. Obviously, they don't want any bouncing, and we'll see quite early on if they do have any bouncing, but they shouldn't. I don't think any teams will. It's just, I don't know. There does seem to be something missing from Mercedes, and I don't know if that is the loss of a few technical or something else. But yeah, it's just a feeling that I've had with them over the last 12, 18 months.
I don't really know where to sit with Mercedes, because I think, yeah, as you say, they're not very bullish, but also there's not that much reason to discount them apart from just the fact they were a little bit off at the start of, for most of last year, but they at points were pulling it back last year, and I thought, that was impressive. That sort of development was impressive last year. So I think it's very much you're just going to have to wait for on track. I think you can rely that Ferrari and Red Bull will probably hit the ground running a bit more likely to hit the ground running just based on where they finished last year. But Mercedes, I think that, there is, like you say, an expectation by some for them to return to the domination and things like that. And I think, we just have to wait and see. I would like to have that sort of that sort of reliable proximity in the fight, but I doubt it will be
I,
that
I,
easy.
I think it's the engine for me. I mean, not just the narrow operating window, but they do seem to now, or over the last 12 months, have had the weakest engine, and that is just free
But the most
time
reliable.
there. Yeah, but if it's not fast, then
Then it'll
that's
finish
no
races.
good.
Yeah, I think
Depends. It all depends. We'll have to wait and see.
I think with Mercedes, then I'm just kind of not sure.
But
Like,
precisely that, just like we don't know yet. And
I mean, to be honest, that
It's-
was me completely forgetting my point as I started to say it. So
Well,
that
I'm
hold my
saving
hand
you.
up.
I'm saving you, Adam. It's kind of like we don't know where they will stand, and there are a team with an expectation, but from fans and from themselves. So whether they can deliver on that, we'll have to wait and see. But they're the team with the best chance to break into the consistent fight for the championship.
Yeah, no, I've got it back. It's kind of with Mercedes, then a big part of where they need to make improvement from last year is the modeling and the way they, you can use their aerotime and use kind of, like computer generated wind tunnel results effectively to actually find out where their car's going to be, because Total Wolff talks about their chart of doom or whatever it was, about where they thought it'd be going wrong. But like ahead of the Brazilian Grand Prix, then Hamilton was saying he doesn't really know what to expect from the car, and he didn't expect it to be as competitive there. And obviously it ended up winning and they got a 1-2. So I think that's a key element for Mercedes, is not just the car, but it's whether they've improved their kind of modeling and software, or I'm not technical enough to go know all the ins and outs of it, but where they have improved that to know what to expect of the car and know where problems are going to be coming from.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's how they got the porpoising problem, because they didn't match from the wind tunnel onto the track. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I've got an order in my head. I know there's been no testing, but I do have an order in my head.
So do I, actually. But we will reveal that
it is very
post-testing. My final thing with the Mercedes, I'm not a fan of the blackout. I think it looks good, but I'm just, in general, I think, if we see more teams going towards this to really drastically save weight, I wouldn't be surprised if the FIA bring in maybe a minimum mandated paint weight or something like that, because I think it kind of feels like it could be a bit of a race to the bottom if more teams, if it's kind of a get out of jail free card of how to cut kilograms off the car, is just do it a blackout. And in terms of their, I guess, branding and identity, they have said that when they started in motorsport, then the car was painted white and then it was too heavy, so they scraped off the paint, so it was just the aluminium shining through, and that's where the silver comes from. So they're saying it's harking back to the heritage from there. But they are the Silver Arrows, and it was it was kind of noble and a big statement to go with the blackout cars in 2020 and 2021 for the reasons they did. But they are the Silver Arrows, and it's kind of worrying if they are going to be moving away from that brand identity, I think.
I kind of agree with that, and I do like the silver. It's kind of my main thing.
Yeah.
I think it is just a nature of where it is at the moment, but we'll have to see, because most of them have got a little bit of color. The only element of color they've got on the cars are the Petronas stripe and then the driver numbers. And I like how the driver numbers pop with a color, but I just don't like how George's are green in clash with the Petronas turquoise.
It's very grass green, isn't it?
Yeah, it just is a little bit of an irritating clash, which, knowing Mercedes, that will change midway through the season or something, because with George's helmet and that, like it did last year. But we'll have to see. But I think it looks great with the yellow for Lewis.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
My last note on Mercedes.
I'm surprised they've not gone with the blue that he had last season. But Nigel, what have you got to? I know this is a topic you feel passionately about, driver number colours.
I don't know why you've asked me that question. I think you've asked me that question intentionally, knowing that you're not going to get much from me.
I mean, Nigel sat in a beige room with a grey t-shirt on at the moment.
In the corner of one poster in shot.
Yeah, he's taken down his other posters.
I'm just going to say I disagree with Freddie. There we go.
Okay, cool. Why not?
I
would say, Adam, to your point about the helmet, they didn't really Mercedes didn't really have their proper helmets as drivers until the first race weekend.
No,
Like,
I
Lewis
meant
was-
have a blue color. For,
Yeah,
for
I know,
his
but-
number,
but-
sorry.
But Lewis was using like a purple helmet, and like a just
Oh, yeah,
placeholder
no,
color until the
yeah.
first race. So maybe they're going to do an announcement on
Yeah.
it or something with some press thing for the first race or for testing or something. Maybe they're just going to use that to get some column inches.
I mean, Nigel's kind of got a similar effect going on with his headphones, really, where they're like kind of black and silver, and then they've got the red lights coming up as well. So it's a
Yeah, a
similar...
bit of red, bit of color for Nigel.
Yeah, so
Well
Nigel's
done.
paying homage to it, even if he doesn't really think much about it. But
Nigel, were you invited to whatever it is, New York Fashion Week or something?
No, I wasn't, but I know someone who was.
Nick DeFries.
Nigel's someone who, like, people would do the videos of like sneaking like bland clothing into New York Fashion Week and getting like really getting designers to go like, give
Wow,
these
look what this
massive-
guy's wearing. Wow.
Yeah, like over the
What
top
are you wearing,
analysis of
Nigel?
it.
Max Fosh.
Yeah,
You're
there we go,
wearing.
that's what I was
Wow,
referencing.
great.
I know my YouTubers.
Some
Fantastic.
YouTubers. Someone who's not a
I know some.
YouTuber is Fernando Alonso, but he was present at Aston Martin's launch as they launched their new car at their new headquarters with their new driver lineup and Lawrence Stroll. They're quite bullish about about their kind of hope for the season and rising up the pecking order after finishing 7th last year, level on points with Alfa Romeo. So, yeah, what are your impressions of Aston Martin, Freddie? And do you think they can deliver on the hype?
Fernando Alonso isn't a YouTuber, but he is now a TikToker, and that's a crucial inclusion that we have to make. That definitely not because TikTok sponsor Aston Martin.
Who else is a TikToker?
I don't think
MSV.TV.
Yeah, there we go. He's plugged my job. And we follow Fernando Alonso. But it's definitely not because Aston Martin is sponsored by TikTok. It's definitely not that. But if you want to go on TikTok,
What's it for then, Freddie?
It's for Fernando Alonso to express himself emotionally on social media and to scroll through fun videos of Perry the Platypus or whatever he does. I don't know.
Do you reckon he likes Toby?
Yes, he likes the Toby talks. But there's a fantastic video of Fernando Alonso just going, "Oh, yes."
He strikes me as a kind of like James May going on TikTok character.
Yeah,
there's similar content to be had there.
There's definitely been some good F1 driver TikTok content in recent years, namely Valtteri Bottas and George Russell for the Mercedes TikTok account.
This is what you don't get on other podcasts: is analysis of F1 drivers' TikToks.
Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
get analysis on some.
Shots fired.
Who are you talking about? No.
No. Move on from that. I'm going to mute myself. I'm muting.
But yes, incidentally, I agree. Aston Martin have been quite bullish. I did have most of it on mute because I couldn't be bothered to listen to the spiel because Lawrence Stroll always seems to just talk about something weird. But from what I've read
Nigel.
since, yeah, like Nigel. Nigel and Lawrence Stroll will get on really well, apart from the fact that Lawrence Stroll used to own Tommy Hilfiger. But anyway, I digress again. Aston Martin have been disappointing in recent years, particularly since their Racing Point and Force India guises being very punching above the belt and all of that kind of thing, and being very thrifty as an F1 team. And admittedly, that was a bad thing because they went into administration. But ignoring that side of it, competitively, they were very good and very thrifty. But now they sort of got a bit lost in recent years. But you're right, Adam, to say that they had a very good renaissance through last year, and they had a very good sort of adaptable team there. And they had their first concept. They realized, this isn't working. They've changed it again. They came to Spain with their B-Spec car, developed through the season, very much on the fly, and ended with a much better car than where they started. And they've continued that concept quite visibly. So with the off-season opportunity to fix all the sort of small hangover problems that you will get when you're doing a B-Spec car quite early in a season. So realistically, just on paper, Aston Martin should be relatively confident about where they're going to go, and on paper they should do that. So if they don't, I think actually genuinely they're a team I could see myself being very disappointed with in the first few races, because I think they should be the team that's promoted the most in terms of where they were in Bahrain in 2022. They should be doing much better.
If you ignore McLaren, because McLaren were last in that. But yeah,
Yes,
in
exactly.
general.
But exactly. Yeah.
No, I'd agree. I think they are the team with momentum on their side. I mean, the way they should have probably got past Alfa Romeo in the constructor standings for some better strategy decisions, perhaps in the final 3-4 races. They should have finished a place higher there. But I think this is the first car that Dan Fallows has got complete control of, and that could make a difference because he is one of the best tech people in F1 over the last decade or so, I think. So there is a lot of excitement. There's a lot of talk about have they found loopholes or does these amazing innovations they have. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be quick, because you might have found, or your car might look different, or you might have found something, but it doesn't mean it's going to perform on track. But I do think they will be at the sharp end of the midfield this year. I just think they're going to carry on that momentum that they had from last season. And I think that's going to be the case for most of the teams, actually. What we saw in the second half of last year, we're going to get in the first part of this year. That's how I kind of see it for most teams.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, kind of tacking on to what Freddie said about they weren't kind of that bold and they were very thrifty. And, this is probably the boldest car they've had, in that they've, tracked Mercedes quite closely over the past few seasons, particularly the Racing Point in 2020. But, this is the kind of biggest breakaway and doing their own thing. And they are talking about the, loopholes and innovations that they think they found that will give them an edge. But yes, they've copied or taken some stuff from Red Bull, like we talked about earlier, in terms of the gap between the big gap on the side pods. But Freddie wants to jump in.
Yeah, well, they proved at the mid last season that they hadn't copied and that they started developing this concept prior to 2022 anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of more philosophy.
Yes, there's a philosophy they've not copied, but they've gone down a similar path to a proven successful path, I think.
Yeah, no, I wasn't
more
accusing.
generous interpretation.
Yeah, no, and having seen how it worked last year for most teams, then why wouldn't you, follow that philosophy? But yeah, it does sound like they've got some tricks up their sleeve that are going to be original and are going to, they hope, put them ahead of the rest of the midfield. And I think particularly, we'll get on to McLaren in a minute, but they're not sounding very confident. So I think really it seems to be that fight for fourth or maybe even higher is there to take in between them and Alpine. So we'll have to see once the cars get on track, as we keep saying. But yeah, it's exciting for Aston. Obviously, they've recruited Dan Fallows. They've got their new wind tunnel, which will be coming online to support next year's car mainly. But they are, they've got their new headquarters. They're just really pushing, and Nigel mentioned this last week, that compare them to, say, Alfa Romeo, then even though they are a kind of, a constructor team in name only, or manufacturer team in name only, in terms of, it's still very in-house at Silverstone without the Aston Martin oversight, but they are pushing, they are innovating, and they are trying to really build up their team. And it's nice to see a team being bold, and hopefully they can be successful through that.
Yeah, I agree. And they've got Fernando Alonso.
Well, yeah, there exciting.
Is that. Yeah, that's quite good.
So,
yeah, and they've got future world champion Lance Stroll.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do. This is what I do love about Fernando Alonso, is that he ended his relationship with Esteban Ocon. 2021 with Ocon was like, Esteban defends like a lion. Oh, I've helped him get this win and so on. We're such a team. Ends 2022 with, he was trying to kill me. I can't wait to leave this team. And then he immediately gets to Aston Martin and goes, oh, look at this guy. He's a future world champion. He's fantastic. And it's just like...
You need characters like this in sport. I absolutely love these types of personalities.
I totally agree. And it just really it makes me chuckle. It's like, you see a headline that just says, Fernando Alonso thinks Lance Stroll's going to be a world champion in the future. And Lance Stroll doesn't think that. So it's impressive that Lawrence Stroll doesn't think that either. No one asked him thinks that Lance going to be a future world champion, unless there's some wild event such as a global recession and every team goes bust. apart from Aston Martin, and they can't afford Fernando Alonso.
Fernando
but we'll
Alonso
see.
goes bust as well.
Yeah, Fernando
I
Alonso
think.
would go bust.
But yeah, I mean, with the lineups, then I think you've got Alonso as a very clear team leader, and Lance Stroll. He won't be he won't be high quality
He's a
through the whole
capable
season, but he
midfield
is.
operator.
Yeah,
at
and he's streaky as
points.
well. He can go on a run. He can have those peaks, and it kind of, sometimes he appears disinterested. And I think there's still a lot of variance in how he can perform the season. But we will see good performances from him and strong performances from him. We'll also see some kind of tearing your hair out performances. So I think they could be in a much worse position in terms of second drivers anyway. So yeah, that's Aston Martin with a lot of optimism behind them.
There will be some annoyingly good Lance Stroll performances that will come just as most people have decided, yeah, I'm kind of done with Lance Stroll. I'm kind of done with this nepotism and things like that. We probably really do need to get a decent driver there. And then Lance Stroll will get into Q3 and get decent points or something. It's like, oh okay. Because he seems to do that. He does get consistent points finishes. Even he had quite a few sort of rear to points drives last year, albeit 10th, maybe a 9th place every now and again. But his Abu Dhabi drive, if we're going by the phrase "you're only as good as your last race," which I hate, by the way, I hate that phrase. It's just an awful phrase because it's not true. But anyway, Lance Stroll is only as good as his 6th or 7th place in Abu Dhabi or 8th, whatever. It was a very good drive his race in Abu Dhabi, and that genuinely he's capable of that. So
he's also capable of some not so good drives. So we'll see. It'll be an up and down season. But a team who thinks that they may be more down than up this season is McLaren, who have already seemed to be downplaying, despite having the 4th best driver lineup on the grid as consensus on the Winging F1 podcast. Then they seem to really be downplaying their chances, and I think it could be a difficult season for McLaren. Nigel, do you concur?
I think it could. It's a similar kind of feeling to Mercedes I've got for them in terms of I don't think the technical team is up to scratch to get them back to winning races, which is ultimately what they want. They've had James Key there since 2019 now. It is. Ricardo say different cars, the 3 different cars they've had in 2020, 2021, 2022, they've all been, let's say, strange, or they've had a narrow operating window, or you need a unique driving style. And that can't be a coincidence now that 3 top drivers that, and I do fear that there could be another year where, say, Norris, it suits Norris, but then it won't suit Piastri, or vice versa, perhaps. So again, like Mercedes, I don't have as much confidence in the technical team.
I kind of think there's his history to make McLaren worried, and we've discussed this before, and you do bring up the Ricciardo thing, and you can compare that to the sort of second Red Bull seat as well, and the fact that it's always been for the past quite some time, it's been a really weird team, and I don't think they're confident they're on top of that at all. And they didn't make any progress with that car from a sort of from an understanding perspective last year that really worked. I think Norris was quite candid that it was a very difficult car to drive, and it was very weird and very difficult to set up. And it doesn't seem like they've got any consensus on that, and their launch is measuring expectations. So with a rookie in the car, a rookie who's hugely rated and proved himself to be very adaptable, it could make or break that, but it could also just be very, very strange, because it's inherently good McLaren in the midfield at the moment, but it's not for lack of trying to be bad from the car. It seems the car seems to want to be bad, but it's quite good.
The one thing that kind of gives me hope is they seem to be clearly slower than Alpine in terms of their car, and they still managed to take the battle for 4th right down to the last few races in 2022. So that's the only really ray of light that I see, because just all of the noises coming out aren't good. Lando Norris was saying really he expects it to be 2024 and 2025 that they come good. That's why he signed his contract extension. They're a bit of a step behind Aston Martin in their infrastructure project. So their wind tunnel will aid the 2024 car and then properly be able to be put to full use on the 2025. So it feels like as a team, they're still a couple of years away from their peak, or they think that as a team, they're still a couple of years away from the peak that they expect. So yeah, maybe
so long now. I've had enough of it. They've been saying it for so long.
But to be fair, they're not saying it for the season. That's the only thing, is they're not saying it for the season. They are it's not like we're getting halfway through the season and then they're going, well, it's not going to be our year. They seem to be coming out feeling pretty apprehensive about it, and they're not kind of really pushing it.
I think the other big thing for me is Andreas Seidel leaving. It's just the same with Williams as well. The difference, so yes, I'm confident about Ferrari, even though their team principal has left. But Ferrari made clear operational mistakes and a fundamental operational race team problems. Whereas McLaren and Williams, it's just the car performance. And I think when a team principal leaves, when you're in that position, McLaren and Williams, that's never a good sign to me, because it's not like Ferrari where there were clear strategy mistakes, for example. So I think Seidel leaving, that's also a big indicator, I think, that the team isn't in the right place and won't be for at least 3 or 4 years, I think.
Yeah, from his point of view, it is a step down the grid now. So it's or certainly from last season.
Step off the grid, really, isn't it, for now? For some.
Well, yeah, but it's going to a project that is starting from further back for 2026. Yes. But he clearly thinks that it's got more potential, and that is telling.
I think there are elements to that, and I think we discussed it at the time. There are elements to it that, for Seidel as a personal position, it's a move that suits him better anyway to be working for a German manufacturer and things like that, rather than in England. But putting that one side, it is a loss for them because he has been a sort of glue for that team in a very good way. So
if he thought McLaren could get back to winning ways, I do not think he would have left personally.
Yeah,
just given his career in motorsport and WEC and that kind of thing, he doesn't strike me as that kind of person who would leave if he saw potential.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, actually. You do sort of stick by your team if it's where you're sort of where your loyalties will lie much easier when it's successful. You're very right with that.
What do you think?
It's an enigma, this McLaren team.
What do you think of the car?
Go for it. Look, I think McLaren was the big weight saver team last year. They rocked up with black and all over the car at Bahrain pretty quickly and stripped it down. And from a pure aesthetic point of view, I think it looked a bit untidy last year, but I think they cleaned that up a bit for this season. But I do think if you look at I spotted this first in the McLaren, but you can see it a bit if you look at other cars, but particularly the front on view, it looks like it's breathing in its mouth and like pouncing its lips. If this is more for a YouTube listener, YouTube viewer, but it's sort of doing like a
describe kind of thing. What kind of shape you did there.
Like a pouting fish, but with a human face. If you look at the front view of the McLaren, that's my impression of the look of the McLaren.
Yeah, I think last year the problem, especially in Bahrain, when they were basically the slowest team, is to me it seemed they went far too conservative with the design. I think it's a bit more aggressive looking this year naturally, but it's hard to say with McLaren, I think.
So Alpine have just launched their car about 5 minutes ago, and it's very similar to last year, but the pink one has a bit more pink on it. Freddie, what are your reactions?
I like the fact they're doing this 2 livery thing again because it's nice. I think it is a clean livery. I like the livery. I have nothing else to say.
I mean,
that's brilliant.
I really liked the Alpine. The Alpine test livery or kind of preview livery that they've done that is all black, which I don't know if they did last year. They definitely did it in 2021. And that would have been, if they could have gone, if any team would go back rather than the Mercedes, really. But they've not done that. They have got more black on it for weight saving. But Yeah,
I've always liked their blue. I've always liked their Alpine blue, to be honest. I think it's a very, very nice color. So I'm okay with that car being that color predominantly. There we go. There's some color.
Anyway. From what I've seen, I mean, obviously every team has not shown their full hand in terms of the 2023 car. Does look like Alpine have shown possibly the least, apart from the Red Bull and Haas. No, Haas was this year, wasn't it?
Haas was livery launch.
Yeah, Haas was
Yeah.
just
So
livery.
apart from Red Bull and Haas, this looks like the least 2023 car from what I've seen, because it doesn't look like many changes there. So yeah, I can't really judge anything on the looks. But what I can say is, I do think, well, it's interesting, Alpine, because the management structure, or the management in general, over the last few years, has been quite poor at certain times. Obviously, with the Piastri thing and the way they handled Alonso and Ocon, and Otmar Zafnauer obviously came in this time last year. So it has been a bit chop and change, but they've managed to create a good car last year, and I think they will do the same this year, because they've still got Pat Fry and the other people. Matt Herman, was that his surname? I forgot his name. Is it Matt Herman? Can't remember. But they still got the same technical people.
I only remember Pat Fry, to be honest, and he's got a very good track record of giving teams decent turnarounds. So I agree with you. I think they've set themselves a target of being closer to P3 than P5 this year in a P4 position, which is an interesting one, considering they were very close to being P5 last year and not very close to being P3 at all. So I'd be interested to see whether that's one of those quotes that just they hope gets lost, or whether it's a genuine step from them into a sort of upper midfield, lower front pack kind of position, because that would be very cool if they can do that kind of development. And they're very open about the fact they need to develop a lot to be able to be a competitive force for the next few years, and need to develop a lot more than just by they're very open about. A lot of teams say, "Oh yeah, we just do our development structure," but they're very good at saying, "Well, no, we need to outdevelop by a significant amount to have any hope of being realistic about anything." So it's interesting to see they've said this unrealistic statement. But anyway, I don't know. I'm intrigued to see where they end up. They've obviously lost Fernando Alonso, but they're a team that should be doing well. So hopefully they do well.
Yeah, I kind of have faith in them. I think it could be a weird one where they maybe are closer to the front, but aren't as close, with Aston Martin potentially improving, and Mercedes, I reckon, will also improve, because they were fighting Mercedes, especially at the start of last season. So I think it could be a weird one where they kind of improve like in a vacuum as a team, but actually that doesn't reflect in the results and in the standings. So yeah, driver lineup, I think Gasly and Ocon is pretty strong. Ocon, we all know he's very talented, and Gasly was one of the top 5 drivers in 2021, or definitely in that conversation. So yeah, I have Freddie's nodding along, but also doing a lot of facial expressions. So watch this on YouTube. Watch just this bit on YouTube, because it's a good performance from Freddie. This
is not a Gasly rating podcast, so I'll shut up.
Okay. I think it's it's a very competent driver lineup, and like Nigel says, they have been able to do the business. They took a step forward last season. They weren't too bad in 2021 either. So yeah, I think there's kind of definitely potential there, but I just feel like they might be improved by the teams around them.
Fun Gasly fact for people who are interested in this kind of Gasly watch. He can now grow more facial hair on his top lip, so he's not got that sort of just lower cheek beard. He's got a full beard now. So yeah, fun.
How's he changed that?
Because he's matured.
Oh,
fun.
Just over the winter.
He's just been able to grow a thicker one, I guess.
Fun Alpine
a thicker mosh.
They are the only team who I own a pen of.
Oh, Adam's now showing us a pen. Great. That's cool, Adam. Well done. I'm proud of you. Another fun Alpine fact that I just saw on Twitter is that the blue paint is made from recycled plastic.
Oh,
It's quite a cool fact. I mean, like, fair enough. Nice little bullet point for a press release, and also probably quite nice just in general to do.
Another Alpine fact is I've been watching the Alpine Skiing World Championships over the last 10 days.
Hey, there we go. And now we're officially a skiing podcast. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
That was so
What is
in
going
sync
on?
for doing it on Zoom with a delay. It's fantastic.
I
don't know
tried
whether-
I tried to do it a little bit quicker than you to try and make it work.
Yeah, I don't know whether also the delay like syncs up perfectly with the kind of
Or if it's even worse.
a beat, a bar. But yeah, another Alpine fact is I will be watching the Alpine stages of the Tour de France this year. So there we go. There's a trifecta. Have we got anything
Another
else
Alpine now, I'm joking.
have we got anything else to add?
I can't
I'm sure
follow
we
that.
could do.
What you guys have just done.
Yeah, we probably can't follow the Ski Sunday theme. Watch Ski Sunday. It's on a
No,
Sunday.
Watch Eurosport and Discovery Plus for all of the
Oh.
Alpine Skiing World Cup and World Championship races.
Yeah, that's fair enough. We actually probably shouldn't promote BBC.
No, you shouldn't.
I like the
I like BBC.
They rejected me. But yeah, so that's it. Unless
Oh.
anyone jumps in with something, then yeah, that is it for now. There's testing next.
I wonder if
week.
someone just jumps into the Zoom call now and with something and just says it. There's some complete
Oh,
strange.
this
I mean, there's
podcast,
no like waiting room, so they could. It's just
Exactly.
need to guess the exact like ID and password. But yeah, the next
We should
week.
put a Zoom link out when we start recording this on Twitter and see what happens.
Oh,
see how
that's great. We can
disappointing
do.
it is.
That's actually a good idea. I like that. I like that.
As
We're doing
content,
that.
it's like we're going to do a live Q&A episode where people can just join the Zoom call.
Goodness me. 180. Is it 180? Yeah, 180.
And then it's just hello, the same person. Leave, please.
Oh dear.
If you want to be part of the podcast, let us know on Twitter at Winging It F1 or at Adam Dickinson.
We're not
Redcoats
canvassing for
1999.
people to be part of the podcast, but if you want
Or
to,
at-
then do.
Well, yeah, you can always like ask or say
You can
no.
always- yeah, chances are we will say no.
Yeah. Unless one of us is quitting, which isn't going to happen for a few months at least. So,
Oh,
Have you
when's
got-
Nigel planning to quit?
Yeah, have you got well? a few
episode
months.
Cool.
333.
What's that, around
What's
May?
okay, guys? We've now seen every F1 car for 2023. What's your big prediction for 2023? Mine is that Nigel's going to quit the podcast.
It won't be quitting. It'll be.
Nigel's going to
What's the
take
better
a.
word?
I'm just going to take a forced retirement from the podcast.
Yeah.
A dishonorable discharge.
Nigel will leave by mutual consent from the Winging
Yeah.
It podcast. Actually, we've been doing me and Nigel. Well, I've not actually made my prediction yet of how much, what percentage of this year Freddie's going to speak in podcasts. But if Nigel does leave, then that would really skew the predictions. So maybe Nigel made his prediction knowing that he would leave, and that therefore Freddie would be 50% of the podcast to begin with. So we shall see. But it'd be a great way to win
Exciting.
the bet. It'd also be quite a large penalty to pay to win the bet.
Would it?
Nigel.
Bye, Nigel.
Yes, it would. Nigel, do you want to expand any more on this, or
No, I think we should just say looking forward to testing because
Yeah, it's-
I will be excited
Expand
about
any more on his
F1
quit
soon.
rulers.
yeah, testing will be starting on the 23rd, so next Thursday, a week today, as we're recording this, in less than a week as you're listening to it. We
Yeah.
will, not sure whether we'll be doing a podcast before or whether we'll go straight into our season preview or what will be happening. We'll hopefully touch on a bit of F2 and F3 before the season starts as well, because that is happening. But yeah, we'll say bye for now. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this, and we will see you next time, whenever that is. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Nigel.
Bye.
Bye.